Yeah, well, that leads to my question very well, because basically what I wanted to say was that, well, first of all, I'm someone who has a doctorate and that's like my circle is an academic circle. And so I have a lot of Warren supporters in my sort of Facebook feed, my friend group.
Right.
And so what I would say is, just to preface this by saying that I'm 100% with you on all sort of arguments of why Bernie Sanders is the number one choice. But I've noticed that there's been a huge uptick of actually quite unfair attacks on Warren in terms of like the online left.
Well, what would be
like the sort of far?
Give me an actual example of that. What does that?
Sure, I'll give you an actual example.
Yeah.
So I understand that like Chapo Trap House subreddit is not a reflection of society, but like
that
I go there
I
for,
would
you know,
totally say is true.
Even the people who host that show disown it.
Yeah, I don't. Like, can you maybe go for something that's a little bit more? Because I'm just
a bit more grounded.
I can't do that. Yeah, because look, I literally I saw I can. The point is,
the way I
give
feel
me
like
something
it,
that's
the way
real.
I feel like it connects, though. Sorry, the way I feel like it connects is that that there's sort of like a downplaying of certain aspects of Warren, whereas like one thing that gives her that helps me sort of feel more positive about her is the representation argument, and that I feel like is being downplayed a little bit. And I guess my larger question is, I'll stop getting around it. My larger question is, how do I convince the people in my circle who are generally pretty well informed, kind of, Warren's target demographic, how do I convince them that Bernie is a better candidate without kind of, on their terms, I suppose?
How about the makeup of their coalition, which would be the first one I'd start with?
He couldn't hear that? Okay, I have something, but Brendan and Matt are going to go first.
I'd say the makeup of the coalitions. Like, Elizabeth Warren is just like white professionals with graduate from college. Like, that's not going to be good in the primary.
We've been talking about this in the office, and I don't think Bernie supporters need to be targeting Warren supporters, because Bernie is not their second choice across the board in polling, I think we found. And I think we should target them insofar as we want as much support for Bernie as possible, but they are not the next people in line that we should be going for. We should be expanding the electorate as Bernie supporters.
All right, I'm going to just be really blunt with you.
Okay.
I think obviously I spend a lot of time ragging on Tulsi and Yang supporters. And I totally see how there's some Bernie Sanders. Everybody can be annoying online. Okay. But the thing that I'm getting from Warren supporters is, and it does reflect the class positionality, is just stunning entitlement. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I don't support Elizabeth Warren. And if I said there is no analogous rhetoric with Bernie Sanders. You can criticize him and maybe not vote for him, but you need to make sure to say something nice about him every other word. You need to make sure that I feel comfortable in you criticizing him. Look, as far as I'm concerned, baseline issues for me are things like single-payer healthcare, universal housing, and things like the Green New Deal. And I also care deeply about foreign and military policy, which no Warren supporter who ranks her as a first choice has any care about. I've even had people bluntly tell me that that's not something they're thinking about, which is the most narcissistic position imaginable. So I'm going to articulate what is and isn't better. If some of your friends actually care about every single human being having health insurance, they care about not increasing the military budget, they care about an actual Green New Deal, they care about those things in a substantive, serious way, they'll go to Bernie Sanders because the argument is a slam dunk. If their primary and overarching concern is the identity one, then there's nothing to discuss. I just respectfully disagree. It's a fair thing to consider.
Also, Bernie's Jewish.
Bernie, and that is, by the way, I'm not going to hang my hat on that, but it is stunning to the degree that is totally erased from the conversation. But I will just say,
but it's erased because it's not really, people who say it's about the representation thing, it's not really about that.
Of course, how many clips do I have to see of there's a new one going of a woman saying, it's a woman's time, but my first choice is Buttigieg, but I can't vote for Sanders. It's bullshit. It's nonsense.
Right.
I'm sorry. And I know, and frankly, it's bullshit.
well,
and I
okay,
don't know, no,
could I push back on that a little bit?
I don't know any single person. Look, there was somebody who wrote in 2008, I forget her name, but she supported Sarah Palin for vice president because it was time. There was somebody in 2000, look, if that's it, then just vote for Carly Fiorina. Vote, like, that's fine, but there's nothing to talk about. There isn't even anything to push back. I think that's the most honorable argument. But there's a lot of people that don't have the other luxury of that argument, frankly, because like they need healthcare, they need housing.
Yeah, that stuff's more important.
That stuff is more important. Lula needs to be out of jail. They need to do something with the military. And if you're not there with it, then that's fine. We just respectfully disagree. We're doing different things. That's it.
It'd be one thing if frankly, if the representation side meant electoral victory, but that's ambiguous itself. So like it's material less important, and electorally, like you can't make the argument.
Electorally, it's totally dangerous.
It's about the narcissism of the class that's supporting her, frankly.
And that is what's getting to be really sickening about. That's why my irritation level with Warren supporters is increasing, because there isn't a substantive case to the left. The electoral case is enormously dangerous, and you're erasing the material needs of millions of people, including people in other countries who get no discourse, which I find disgusting, frankly. So, that's it. And you can either accept those arguments and be serious about it and actually engage on real terms, or, again, just cleanly say, if somebody just says, hey, look, I want Andrew Yang to be president. We haven't had an Asian American president. That's what I'm voting on. I don't care. Okay. I want the first black woman president. I'm voting for Kamala Harris. I don't care about a record. Okay. But then that's it. That's a 10-second conversation.
I think for most people, it's one aspect among many issues. Maybe the last thing I'd say was that that for Warren now, like, again, I actually agree with everything that you're all saying. But one thing that I think about in terms of Warren being okay if it ends up turning that way is that thinking back to Bernie in 2016. He was not the Bernie of now. Like, the Bernie today is much, much better. And I would hope that Warren could be pushed in a similar direction. I'm speaking
part of what makes Bernie
foreign policy.
Partially but that's Bernie reverting to type. That's Bernie going back to the 1980s. Again, like, I can't. There are people who are getting elected to Congress and positions of power in a completely changed political environment, who are already significantly more compromised than Bernie in being in power for, 16 months. Like, again, if you have left politics, this is it. This is the choice. Now, especially watching this show, there's a broad set of people, and I know a broad set of people. That's great. I know people who are Republicans. I know people who, frankly, they don't really care about poor people, right? I know people who don't really, democracy okay, but technocracy yay, right? Those are Warren supporters that I know. Yes, that's true, if I'm being blunt. And there's people that, I think have very sincere politics, and we argue it out, but we argue it out on the merits. And I'm not willing. And also, I'll just say one other thing that will, this will piss everybody off. I'm somebody who supported Hillary Clinton in the 2016 general election. I said you need to vote in such a way as to prevent Donald Trump from being president. And I say that as somebody who, again, especially because I also care about the world and have an understanding of foreign policy, Hillary Clinton is like contemptible. It's not just like, oh, that isn't my preferred choice. If you look at the policies in Honduras and Haiti and so on, contemptible. And I absolutely, without a second hesitation, would say You vote to prevent Donald Trump from being president, period. So I say again in 2020, if it's Elizabeth Warren, if it's Joe Biden, if it's Tulsi Gabbard, if it's Andrew Yang, if it's Pete Buttigieg, I will say, if you are voting in Michigan or Pennsylvania, you vote for the candidate that will defeat Donald Trump. Period. Case closed. I've not revised my thought on voting preventing a greater evil at all. Case closed. Right now we're in a primary, and there is a generational opportunity candidate versus a decent-ish technocrat on domestic policy with bad foreign policy candidate, and then a whole bunch of really bad candidates. So I'm going to go to the mat for him. And, people should know that. And if I get anything factually wrong or anything like that, then people, I'll apologize to Biden for getting something factually wrong, or Yang, or any of them. But nobody gets special treatment.
It's funny. I often tweet out, not because I think the vote itself matters, but just the propaganda value of saying, if Joe Biden's the nominee, I'm not going to vote for him in New York. I'm going to vote for some third party thing.
Sure.
I'm going to do that. And the people that really get upset by me messaging that,
right,
I think you should read the centrist authoritarian literature because it'll be like looking in a mirror.
100%. But I do expect people, just as I did in 2016, with a just an awful candidate, a truly despicable candidate in Hillary Clinton, to have the maturity to, recognize that, like, you're not a dreamer.
Right.
So you're going to vote to not have people's, additional people's lives savaged. So yeah. I am still totally of, you have an inside, you have an outside approach, and part of politics at times absolutely requires voting in an ultra pragmatic way. And so that point still stands. And then before we get to that point, we have a primary. We have an opportunity to elect somebody who's actually really good. And you better believe I'm going to take that, because I don't see this opportunity coming again for decades.
And also, this isn't just about opportunity anymore.
Right. But actually, right. Are you still there?
Yes. Yeah. No, well, I mean, thank you for taking the call. I mean, I guess some people just can't be convinced.
No,
in terms of my friends, I'm talking about.
Yeah, and they're not committed to these things. They're committed to a different set of things. And I think, that's the thing where it's
Sorry. One thing I might add to it is I think there's also there's a lot of like trauma that was involved with the 2016 election, and so political discourse has become like it's sort of difficult to go hard.
No,
at least with
there's
the people I know, because it tends to make people sort of back away.
With not having health insurance for most of your life. There's trauma associated with being homeless. There's trauma associated with Raytheon blowing your fucking family up. I get it. I understand. And I wish in general people could be much more emotionally intelligent in general. But I'm sorry, this is an election. This is not built around certain subsets' feelings and experience of how arguments are made online. It's ridiculous. There's serious stakes here. If you're not for it, if your fundamental issues aren't things like giving everybody health care, great. Own it and make your argument. I'm here to do that. I don't care about... If I cared about every single person's narcissistic needs and fixations, who would I criticize? I mean, look at everybody laughs when we talk about Yang and Tulsi fans acting like a cult, and they absolutely do. Well, I'm sorry. I see the same version of it. Deal with it. And if you have an actual criticism of Bernie that isn't like, I feel like I didn't like the intonation of how he said something, I've heard it. I've criticized Bernie, but it better be real, because I'm talking about real stuff. I haven't said anything about Warren that isn't policy focused and isn't fundamental values focused. And you can either deal with that, and if you can't deal with it, then I don't know.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious.
Tempted to make a Harry Potter joke.
I'm kind of curious what it is that
thank
you're
you for
hearing.
taking my call.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Oh wait, Brendan, you had a question for him?
I'm wondering what it is you're hearing from them exactly. Like if there's like a moment that you've had with them.
You mean like, Warren
support when you're trying to reason with them?
Yeah, what do they say?
Like, trying to get down to the brass
it's like
tacks.
Things like, for instance, with the Working Families Party announcement, it's like, there's going to be a lot of people really mad about this, and like sort of not taking the the issues with it that seriously.
Like the principle of what a vote counts.
Right. Yes. A lot of people will be
democracy.
a lot of people will be mad that they are not releasing a vote total.
That is authoritarianism.
That's authoritarianism. That is people's whose personal comfort and emotions are more important than a democratic process. And I'm sorry, I don't respect that.
And that's a distinction I see between Bernie supporters and Warren supporters, and it's drawn very clearly in like the professional distinctions of who supports these people. Is that these really highly educated people don't always exactly believe in a true democracy. And they'd rather just let the smartest people in the room run it.
Honestly, I'm not even
correlated with that,
they've really read the proposals either.
Of course they haven't, and they're entitled.
Yeah.
I've read some of Elizabeth Warren's Medium posts, okay, and I've read Bernie's, and it's like the line. It's like Warren's identity politics for journalists. It's like, look, people's bios do matter. So some of the things that I've seen and experienced in life are going to affect my perspective on this, but it's also like an ability to say, talk to a broader set of people. And again, look at the numbers. I mean, why is it that, why is there a broad working class coalition for Bernie Sanders? And why is it that it is a glut of overeducated white people for Warren? I mean, I'm sorry. And it's all of the thing, like everything you're saying is all of the vacuousness and entitlement that I can't stand. And I don't have anything for it.
Right, but then the scary thing is her numbers seem to be gradually going up as Bernie seems to be holding.
Well, yeah,
that's
scary.
That's why I feel like I'd like to reach more people.
Well, I'm going to reach who I can reach, and I think that there is a big subset of the Democratic electorate that that are they're the wine track, they're the Bill Bradley, Howard Dean sort of thing, and I think it's a question of picking enough of them. And maybe some of them really can actually be persuaded on the actual merits if they actually care about things like single payer. And then beyond that, it's a question of can the multiracial actual working people of the Democratic Party still prevail over the technocratic class? And it remains to be seen. And then the next thing that becomes an even bigger danger is that demographic certainly dominates in the opinion and professional class of the Democratic Party, but it is absolutely, certainly geographically not the roadmap to winning a general election, which gets me to my genuine, terrified, practical concern, because I am not a socialist or a leftist who in any way downplays the necessity of beating Donald Trump. I think that's an absolute necessity, and I am increasingly terrified of someone like Warren going up against him, because I think there's huge vulnerabilities there precisely because of this coalition that's being assembled. And maybe that's what you say to them. Yeah. Thanks for the call, man.
Well, thanks for taking my call. And also, Justin Trudeau's an idiot. Thank you.
Oh, yes, definitely. He is a idiot.
I mean, that's not to go off a little bit more, but that's what upsets me about the WFP thing. Like, a lot of people told me, you're going on about it too much, and fair enough about emphasis. But I did not, and I've tweeted a lot about this, I did not have a single Warren supporter or WFP supporter able to defend that the way that they handled keeping that vote unified, as they say, secret, as I would say.
Right, of course.
And so what you're asking me to do is be disingenuous about it. Like it's an affront against democracy. That's just what it is. And frankly, if you're a Warren supporter, you shouldn't want to see that happen either, because really what it's doing is setting her up to fail. Because if she actually if she gets the boost off of this endorsement, which is frankly subsidized by coupling her vote with Bernie Sanders as a 1-2 thing, and she ends up not being as supported by a grassroots movement as that might make it appear, then she's set up to fail. You should want to know what exactly, how many people are behind her. If the people were behind her, it'd be great to know that.
Sanders people can be annoying and combative like everybody. But what I don't see as a matter of structure, and I know all of the lies and all of the, Bernie bro, blah, 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 blah. But I do never see anything that is either a substantive contradiction. I see people saying, hey, I'm supporting Bernie because I don't have health care. I'm supporting Bernie because I'm committed to X, Y, and Z. And I see Bernie people saying like, hey, could you not lie about a poll? Could you not, use an anti-Semitic caricature in a headline? Could you, any number of other things that they can point to. I never see like, and maybe it's just the baseline, but I just never see the presumptuousness of like, hey, I'd like you, even if you don't support my candidate, I'd like you to never criticize him, talk about his record. Like, I honestly Yang and Tulsi people, it is like gets extremely cultish and it's kind of its own thing. But the Warren people, the ones that I actually just hear like, yeah, no, Warren, she's great. So even if you're not voting for her, I'd appreciate if you didn't say anything about her record or policy proposals because I find that like unfair. That is the level of delusion and entitlement in that is mind-blowing.
Or they ventriloquize other people saying, I'm not personally uncomfortable with you bringing up policy substance or the truth about what this like vote is,
right?
But other people are off-put by it, and it's like I don't care about ventriloquists. That's the same thing with the Tom Skoka thing we talked about. Like
right.
that, everybody likes to do that to ventriloquize some other third person besides saying like I actually believe this. I think you're attacking Warren too much. Like
right. Well, and also like, that's the thing too. It's like, I remember one time I was on I-24 talking with some I was about to make a super intense Sopranos joke. I'll step back from that. And we were debating torture and he kept saying, I had people who died on 9/11. And at first it was like, okay, that's horrible. All right. It's not really the point, but that's a strong visceral appeal. I can't really respond to that. But then it was like he had friends in the intelligence community. He had friends in the military. And I just started being like, well, my friends in intelligence say this.
It's
like everybody can play that game. Everybody has somebody who said something.
It's a statement from a Warren supporter. Warren just signals a greater degree of competency. Bernie will say anything and then leave the details kicking the can down the road.
There you go.
Yeah.
So first of all, and again, I guarantee you that person has not read the policy proposals from either of them. Like I would bet $1,000, that before that tweet, nobody has read a full policy proposal from each. I am totally confident of. And also,
Warren's kicking the can down the road on the main policy proposals.
Right. So her prime can kick is the biggest domestic issue we face. And incidentally, all of Bernie's plans are fleshed out. And also, let me just and I'll just say, look, I don't care that you lie about Bernie like that, but I've heard from a lot of people they find it off-putting. And I wouldn't do it because it hurts you.